Where are all the bus drivers? The labor shortage is hitting schools hard as students embark on their third disrupted school year. The electric vehicle race is heating up. Could there be a Tesla killer on the horizon? And Love Hate 8 to end the week. Friday Need to Know. Let's go. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for Friday, September 17th. I'm Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Hi, Carlo.
Happy Friday Talk, Jill. How are you? Good to see you. How was your atonement?
Yom Kippur was actually good. I mean, look, I'm a fan, actually, of taking the one day and really reflecting on the past year and trying to atone for your sins. And it forces you to think about what kind of person you want to be. You know, what you did wrong. Yeah. And I always take it quite seriously. So it was, I appreciate the day, as hard as it is to fast for the whole day. And for some reason, I had such a hard time with it yesterday. I really went to bed. I don't know why. I usually, it's fine. It's not that big of a deal. It's just 24 hours, not even. But I just couldn't do it yesterday.
That seems like a pretty big deal to me. I don't know if I could do that.
Well, I'm going to talk more about some of my reflections, if anyone cares to hear them, at the end of the podcast today. But also want to mention we're going to be doing YouTube. We're going to be doing a live chat on YouTube, right?
Yes, absolutely. Before I forget, as I did last week, the YouTube live chat today, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, youtube.com/Cheddar. Now, I will tweet the link, as will Jill. It will also be in the newsletter. So join us if you're listening to this at 9 a.m. Eastern. Go on the YouTube, chat with us. Jill and I will be there. We'll be taking questions, comments, love, hate, hate submissions, whatever you guys want to talk about.
And we need it because last week, and I don't want to just make fun of us, but no one showed up, right? It was just you and Baker.
There was a couple people, but it was fairly embarrassing. But I blame myself because I didn't promote it. I didn't tell him. So it's my own fault.
All right, let's get to the news here. The Department of Homeland Security warning about the potential for violence leading up to and during the Justice for J6 rally. It's planned for tomorrow in D.C. So that's the big protest in support of the defendants who are charged in the January 6th riot. The organizer of the rally has said that extremists looking to cause trouble are not welcome and that it will be a peaceful event. But Republicans in Congress steering clear of the rally, even those who have said the rioters were political prisoners and should be released.
Former President Trump also opining, calling this a setup for Republican voters, basically saying it's like a honeypot for the government to entrap them or something. But law enforcement not taking any chances. We talked the other day. They put the fence back up outside the Capitol. They say it'll come down after this weekend, but we'll see. Those things are, I feel like they're never really, it always stays longer than they say they're going to. Anyway, Capitol Police have also recalled all of the available officers they have for tomorrow. The worry is that there's going to be clashes between protesters and counter-protesters all around Washington. So if you're in the sort of Nova DC area, I would steer clear of downtown DC tomorrow at all costs.
A really fascinating story. Students in Massachusetts being picked up on the bus this week by members of the National Guard. Schools in Missouri are dropping most of the requirements to become a substitute teacher. One big district in Florida offering signing bonuses for cafeteria workers. The nationwide labor shortages that we've been talking about for months now really hitting public schools especially hard, and yet another COVID-era school year gets underway. So one school superintendent in Antonio told the New York Times, quote, "It is ironic because for forever schools have been underfunded and felt like they couldn't do what they needed. But now you've got this federal funding. We have plenty of money, but just the human capital is not there." Again, I find this to be incredibly troubling, but also just so fascinating, because you'd always thought schools were sort of immune to this type of thing.
Yes, well, a lot of school districts have struggled for years with hiring and retaining, the quote unquote behind the scenes workers, like the people other than teachers, right? So subs, bus drivers, cafeteria staff, janitors, and it's being made just all the more difficult. One of the things that's happening is there's all of these newly competitive jobs in the private sector at this sort of lower pay grade, right? Like fast food and retail. There, you can make $15, $16 an hour at McDonald's. You can make $18, $20 an hour at Amazon. If you're only making the minimum wage as a cafeteria worker, what are you going to choose there, right? So that's sort of one of the things that's at play here. The other thing is, I think a lot of people just don't really are just too afraid of being in close contact with kids right now, right? And in these school buildings. But it's a heartbreaking story. The New York Times interviewed some of these cafeteria workers and bus drivers, and they just talked about all of these things that we were saying. But the thing that keeps them in these jobs is that they're just so dedicated to these children. And there was one woman in Texas who manages a cafeteria at one of the public schools, and she was just talking about, like, I wake up at 4 a.m. every morning. I make 400 meals every day for these kids, and the reason I do it isn't because of the money. It's because the smiles on their faces. I know these kids by name, right? I've watched them grow up.
I heard an interview with a bus driver in New Jersey, and she was saying that there's a lot of bus drivers, kind of how you were mentioning, who are close to retirement and just didn't want to deal with the stresses of COVID. So she described buses as petri dishes on wheels. In some cases, she said you've got like 50 kids crammed into these buses. And she said a lot of things that they asked for, just like even plexiglass between the driver and the students, they didn't get. So it's this perfect storm where you have older drivers who say it's not worth it for health reasons.
Right.
And then younger people, in some cases, as you were mentioning, who are being lured into jobs that are offering better pay and benefits, which according to this one driver, she said a lot of bus drivers don't get full benefits early on in their career. And by the way, there's also...
And it's a weird schedule, too, right?
Exactly.
It's like you're working really early, and then you're working in the afternoon, which keeps you from being able to have, like, another job on the side, right?
Well, that's what she was saying. She's like, because you basically work, just say, 3 or 4 hours in the morning, and then 3 or 4 hours in the afternoon, or you just say 3, so it's like 6 hours total. So you're technically maybe a quote-unquote temp, but you can't do anything else. It still takes a full, 11 hours of your day, so you can't really go out and get other work. And by the way, I was mentioning a teacher shortage. And I saw this firsthand because my mom, who taught elementary school art for years, and she taught long after she could have retired. And every year it was sort of this like joke in my house where she would debate. She'd be like, well, they're offering this package, of incentives, maybe I should retire. Yeah. And then she'd always come to the conclusion where, nope, not this year. I love my job. I love the kids. And just sort of like, why would what am I going to do? I want to work. And then COVID hit and it sealed the deal. And she was like, trying to teach remote was just, it was brutal, especially elementary school art. So that's when she said, I'm going to officially retire. And she said she had a ton of friends like that.
I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that she retired during COVID. Wow. Yeah, I bet you that story has replayed a million times over this country, right? It's something you don't think about. And when you think about kids, what struck me is in our cold open when you said we're now in the 3rd school year of, impacted by COVID, what that's going to mean for these kids. It's really heartbreaking. And we don't know the long-term ramifications we don't know.
Yet.
That's the thing. We don't know.
Switching gears, a new humanitarian crisis is brewing on the southern Texas border, where a temporary camp housing thousands of migrants has been growing fast. Nearly 10,000 migrants are being held in deteriorating conditions under a bridge that connects Mexico and the United States. Customs and Border Protection is now sending in reinforcements to help process this growing swell of people, the vast majority of whom are now fleeing the various crises in Haiti.
That's what's a little bit notable about this from past border searches. These people are coming from Haiti. They're not coming from El Salvador, Guatemala, these Central American companies that we're used to. It just shows you.
Countries.
I'm sorry. Countries. But it just shows you. I mean, Haiti. The earthquake, the assassination. That country is just in the depths of hell, really. And for these people to figure out how to get over here, and under these conditions just shows you how desperate they are. Border Patrol says they're staging these folks under this bridge so that they don't die of heat stroke in the sun. It's like 100 degrees down there. But the pictures are bad. You'll be seeing those probably splashed across cable news today. Republicans blaming President Biden for creating these conditions. Texas Governor Greg Abbott is calling this situation comparable to the Afghanistan evacuation.
Forgetting the Afghanistan evacuation, a lot of Republicans saying, it is Biden's fault, specifically as it relates to children. Because if you remember, he had said early on in his presidency that we were not going to turn away migrant kids at the border. And you are hearing these stories of infants and kids literally being thrown over border walls and fences.
The whole thing is so heartbreaking. It defies an easy answer. But all I think about when I hear these stories is I just think about how desperate you must be to do that to your child. And just that I wish that people, when it came to immigration, just sort of approached it with like a little more grace. Right. Just like these are people, and they're not doing this. They're not coming over here for any reason other than for a better life for them and their children.
Well said. Okay, a day after the U.S., the U.K., and Australia announced a new defense alliance meant to counter China, France is reportedly furious with the Biden administration, and here's why. They're upset because basically the Biden administration made this deal without France's knowledge. So let's walk through this because it's a little complicated. Like you'd think China would be the country that was furious about this. Okay, so France and Australia had a security alliance for years that involved France selling the Australians conventional submarines. That deal is now moot, with the U.S. leading a deal to help Australia build out a fleet of nuclear-powered subs as a way to assert its influence in the Pacific. All of this has to do with alliances being redrawn in anticipation of a possible military conflict with China somewhere down the line. But there were basically, the idea is there were billions of dollars on the line for France here.
Yeah.
And so many workers that will be without work
Right.
now or have less work. So that's what's the motivation by France being, they feel like they were very much betrayed by the U.S. here.
Stabbed in the back, I believe the foreign minister said. China, by the way, now has the largest navy in the world, which I think I knew that, but I may have forgotten, but pretty remarkable. French diplomats, just to show you how pissed off they are, they actually canceled a gala at the embassy in D.C. tonight over this issue. The French foreign minister comparing Biden to Trump, saying, quote, "Allies don't do this to each other. It's rather insufferable," which gave me a chuckle because I love to be called insufferable by the French of all people. But seriously, though, I think you put it well. Biden and the Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison, they sort of blindsided everybody here with this deal. But it just speaks to the worry about the rise of China, both here and in Australia.
Right. And the irony, again, France more furious about this deal than China, but administration officials sort of betting that it's going to eventually just blow over with France, and that in the long term, it's in France's best interest, along with the U.S. and Australia and the U.K., to have this sort of stronger front to deal with China. Once again, I just want to mention, if you are struggling to understand the relationship between the U.S. and China and the threat that China poses, I do recommend that Barry Weiss podcast, Honestly, with Josh Rogan. It was eye-opening for me. Did you get to listen to it yet?
The same one you're talking about with the lab leak.
Yes, because there's part one and part two. Part two deals more broadly with the China issue. Part one is about why the lab leak theory was sort of squashed early on, but both point to just this influence that China has, and that the way, not the Chinese people, by the way,
right.
the communist government.
Right. My podcast queue is really struggling over here. Having a baby, I don't have any time for podcasts. I don't have any time to read. I don't have any time to watch movies. Woe is me. I know. Like, stop your complaining. But really, I used to read like a book every couple of weeks at most. I haven't even picked up a book in 3 months.
Well, I loathe my commute. It's my least favorite part of my day, but I've tried to turn that around and make it more enjoyable by listening to podcasts. So I've tried to kind of find the silver lining in it, where I am able to listen to podcasts, which I never that are not even news related sometimes, that I would never have the chance to listen to. So I kind of feel like that's how I try to make the best of it.
I miss the commute for that exact reason.
So come back. We miss you here.
Yeah, you're right. I should. I gotta talk to the boss about that first.
The electric car market in the U.S. is about to get a whole lot more competitive. Lucid Motors has received an astonishing EPA estimated range of 520 miles on a full charge for its upcoming luxury sedan. It's called the Air Dream Edition. That would beat the longest range Tesla by 115 miles. The Lucid Air is going to cost you about $169,000. But good luck getting one. The car's been sold out ever since the pre-orders started.
And it's not just Lucid. Rivian, which is the maker of those electric pickup trucks, they just rolled off their first electric pickup off their assembly line in Illinois earlier this week, making that company the first to market with an all-electric truck. That car, $69,000 is the sticker. And again, like the Lucid car, already sold out. You can't even get one. First delivery scheduled for next month. We've also got GM's electric Hummer. That's coming in 2023. Ford's electric F-150 is coming before that. Ford actually said this week they're increasing production because the demand is so high. So there's sort of two separate markets here, right? There's the pickup market, which is going to be interesting. It'll be really interesting to see if pickup drivers in America are down to switch to electric trucks. Then there's the sedan and the SUV market, which Tesla currently dominates. They've shown that people are willing to buy those cars. But I have to say, Lucid, have you seen these cars that Lucid Motors makes?
I have. Are they cool?
Oh, they are sexy as hell. Seriously, go check them out. I mean, they're obviously extremely expensive, but 500 miles on a charge, that's a game changer, right? That means you could drive, New York to North Carolina on a single charge. Like, incredible. You can't even do that on a single tank of gas. That company, I think, could really give Tesla a run for its money. Go check out this car. It's gorgeous.
It's fascinating because there is, Tesla, I feel like, has this cachet to it where there's people who only want a Tesla if they're going to go electric, and they're not interested necessarily in like Ford's version or GM's version.
Right.
It was thinking that if Apple does, as rumored, get into the car game with whatever version of, an iCar they come out with, that potentially could rival Tesla. But the one thing, you see all of these automakers who are basically they're betting on that people are going to go electric. And yet a lot of Americans still really hesitant, mostly because of just the infrastructure and how and charging it, and because of the range. And so at CNBC, one of the reporters there did this great story where they took an electric car on kind of a mini road trip to see what it was like and compare it to just a regular gas-powered vehicle. And they were saying, it's great up until you need to find somewhere to charge it. And then, unlike people who are going into a gas station where it takes you all 5 minutes to, you put your credit card in, you get your gas, and then you move on. If you want to charge an electric vehicle on the road, a full charge, it takes like almost 40 minutes, 45 minutes in some cases. Yeah. Imagine doing that, the reporter was saying, with kids who are like, going stir crazy. What do you do with them? If you're single and by yourself, you get on your phone, whatever, it's not a big deal. So that is still the barrier, I think, and perhaps the infrastructure package that's going to handle it. But until the infrastructure around charging your electric vehicles improves, I think you're going to see some hesitancy.
No, I agree. And also, I mean, I think about like my parents, they don't have a garage, right, where they live up in Westchester.
That's interesting. So, you need a garage to charge them.
I don't even know if you actually need one, but I think you probably, I guess you could run a 220 electric cable out of your house, but that would be kind of weird. So anyway, there's a lot of stuff that I think they still need to figure out with the charging, but it's interesting to watch. I mean, I still haven't driven in a Tesla. If someone has a Tesla and they want to come give me a joyride around Brooklyn, I'm around later today. It
is cool. When you go in a Tesla, I've only driven in one once.
It's so quiet.
It's super quiet, and it does feel like a different driving experience. It feels like Tesla reinvented the car. They didn't just make these incremental improvements that you see in these legacy cars that have been around. They basically said, okay, let's take a car. Like, if we were designing it from scratch, what would it look like? And it's so technologically advanced. So I recommend it. Okay, finally, let's get on the record with this wild story out of South Carolina that feels like it is straight out of a true crime podcast. A prominent lawyer who tried to fake his own murder after his wife and son were killed has now turned himself in. Alex Murdaugh admitted to this scheme to have a former client shoot him in the head so that his living son could collect the life insurance payout. It was a plan that Murdaugh's lawyer says he concocted after suffering massive depression and an opioid addiction following the killings of his wife and his other son earlier this year. He's maintaining that he had nothing to do with those murders, which are still unsolved.
It's kind of hard in the little bit of time we have here to even do this story justice. It is that bananas. Truly one of the crazier stories that I've read in years. The web of criminal activity here stretches actually even further than this. There was a 2015 murder in which Murdaugh's one son was rumored to be involved in. No charges ever filed in that one. And then in 2019, his other son, the one who's still living, was arrested for allegedly driving a boat while drunk that killed a young woman. He was scheduled to go to trial, but then he was murdered along with his mother before that could happen. So I don't even, the whole thing is insane. I linked to a pretty good explainer in the newsletter today if you haven't been following this. But I think this story is all over the morning show, so you may already have heard of it.
All right, let's do a little love, hate, hate. One thing that we love, vest weather. So there's only about 3 weeks between summer, when it's too hot, for any extra layer, and then the start of winter when you need a heavier jacket. So I, for one, am going to savor it, Carlo. We're almost there. I think we're about 2 weeks away from vest weather.
When you say vest, are you talking about sort of like the outerwear vest or like a sweater vest?
Yes, an outerwear vest.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yes,
I couldn't see you rocking it. I couldn't see you rocking one of those like Argyle sweater vests.
No, just like a cute little vest to throw over an outfit.
Well, my thing, Jill, right? It's the same way that I feel like shorts and a hoodie. You get about 3 weeks. It's the same climate. It starts around, you're right, I think later September for most of October. It's the best weather in the country as far as I'm concerned. Fall, that few weeks of fall in the Northeast. Anyway, one thing that we hate, tell me if I'm the only one here, but Googling. Has anyone else realized how bad that Google has gotten lately? The search results I'm talking about. Especially if you Google something that is like particularly like sort of complicated, or if the search terms are long and have a lot of keywords, the first page you're getting now is like mostly ads. It's really, you have to scroll like 5 or 6 times just to get to the actual thing you're searching for, and it's often not even what you actually wanted. So I feel like back in the day, the Google search results were like brilliant, and they've gotten worse. And I don't know if this is just me or if it's something that's actually happening out there. I'd be curious to hear if other people have had the same experience. But I've been using the search engine DuckDuckGo. It's not as good as Google in a lot of ways, but it does have some privacy protections that I like. And most importantly, it doesn't have the ads at the top. It has the ads on the side. I find that to be less confusing, because with the Google, the ads make it look like they're what you're searching for. Right?
And my computer, my phone, and my MacBook have started to block me from opening those ads. I don't know what happened. So it's really frustrating because it doesn't look like an ad. So I'll go to Google something and I'll click on it and it'll say it can't open. And then I'm like, oh, I got to go back. So my husband, you turned him on to DuckDuckGo also. He uses that now for the privacy reasons.
I love when I make recommendations that people take.
Okay, one thing that we ate breakfast for dinner to break the fast. We're talking an everything bagel and lox smothered in cream cheese with tomato, a little onion, French toast on the side. Roll me here at Carlo this morning. I felt actually sick to my stomach when I went to bed last night, but it is delicious.
Do you put capers on?
I do. If it exists, I love capers.
Yeah.
It's just like salt.
I used to not be a caper guy, and then recently I've gotten into them, and I'm down with the capers on the everything bagel now.
Speaking of Yom Kippur and just the Jewish New Year, it's a very good time to reflect, Carlo, and just as I mentioned at the top of the podcast, you look back on the past year, things you could have done better, and atone for them. Just you atone for your sins, but it's a really good time to reflect. So I did a lot of that, and I just want to once again thank you, Carlo, and our team here at Cheddar Need2Know, and this amazing community of listeners that we've built, just for always keeping us honest, pushing back when they don't like what we said, but doing it with good intent and staying respectful and just getting the conversation going. And I know you can appreciate that too. The emails that we get blow me away in terms of just how genuine they are, and they're not confrontational, which I think you see so much of on cable news, like just trying to be right. And I appreciate that we're all just in this conversation. And also giving these great ideas and suggestions. I was talking Wednesday about how I went to that soccer class with my daughter and ended up pretty miserable when I left, just because couldn't help human nature comparing myself.
Feeling bad about yourself.
Yeah, like the other moms who were so cute and put together and happy and they all knew each other. And I'm there in sweatpants and didn't brush my hair. Anyway, one of our listeners, Tom, wrote in to recommend a great podcast, and I wanted to pass it along. It is called Hidden Brain. And each week, or however often they do it, they take a look at a different subject. There's a really good one about regret and happiness, and you get just these great tips and insights on, again, human behavior, and I highly recommend it. On my commute home, listened to a bunch of them, and it was great. So thank you, Tom, and I wanted to pass it along.
Awesome, thank you. Hidden Brain. I will add this to my growing list of unlistened podcasts.
Yes.
and we'll get to it as soon as I can. But well said, Jill. And I just completely agree. I love everybody who listens and who writes in. And join us on YouTube in a little while now, and we can talk more.
All right, that is what you need to know for Friday, September 17th.
All right, guys, have a great weekend.